All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be an update to a video that I did almost 2 years ago on a brother by the name of Chanel Lewis. He's a cat with very severe learning disabilities, and he's very clearly mentally handicapped. He was accused not only of raping, but murdering a young woman by the name of Katrina Vetrano, who's from a neighborhood here in New York City by the name of Howard Beach in the borough of Queens. And I want many of you brothers who are from the New York area to stay up on this case. Make sure that you follow this case, because they're trying to do the okie doke on this cat, Chanel Lewis. There's no doubt in my mind from the very start where they put forth this narrative about him allegedly raping and murdering this woman. It was very clear to me that something was rotten in Denmark. Now, the case was recently declared a hung jury. So now they're going to push back the case. They're going to retry it again sometime in mid-January, maybe late January. So stay on top of it, because just by the fact that the jury was not able to come to a clear decision shows you that even they know, with the preponderance of evidence that the prosecution allegedly has, that there has to have been some fudging in the facts. There has to have been some chicanery afoot. And I want you guys to pay very close attention to these two people right here. These are Katrina Vetrano's parents. Look at how the father is dressed. Nothing against him, but I believe I stated in the original video that it would not surprise me if he's the person who actually is involved in her murder. Of course, everything that I'm saying is alleged, okay? What I'm saying is alleged. But I want you guys to pay very close attention to the particulars of the case. This person right here, Katrina Vetrano's father, was allegedly the person who normally would accompany her on her jogs in that park in Queens. I'm trying to remember the name of the park. I believe it was Spring Creek Park. And it was in a very desolate area. And as we're going to see in this feature here, they're going to show Katrina Vetrano jogging through that park. And there are certain things that have amazed me about this case from the very start. But once again, very, very close attention to how both he and his wife are dressed. He's dressed in the all black, and he has on a necklace that you may recognize. It's a necklace with an amulet at the bottom of it of a horn. That's something known as the cornicello or the cornuto, the devil's horn. And he's dressed in all black. Please do not take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. That's an amulet that many quote unquote Italians wear that allegedly is supposed to keep away evil spirits, but it's known as the cornuto. And those of us who have an understanding of the arcane or of the occult, even on a rudimentary level, we understand that whenever they venerate the horn, it's for their god Pan. And Pan always demands a sacrifice. So there's something very murky. There's something very strange about this person here, her father. Of course, once again, everything I'm saying is alleged. But when you research the case, you're going to see that the police may be involved, the father may be involved. But I'm a firm believer that that man, Chanel Lewis, did not kill her. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Breaking news tonight, parents stone-faced and in shock. A mistrial in a murder case that captured the city's attention. The jury deadlocked on the man accused of beating, strangling, and killing a Queens jogger 2 years ago. Good.
Brothers, let me say this very quickly, and I believe I touched on this in the original video. We live in the age of surveillance. It's very difficult to commit a crime like what he's accused of committing without there being any video evidence. Not only do they not have any video footage of him committing the crime, the alleged crime, but they have no footage of him entering or leaving the park. At some point, we have to see some type of video evidence that he entered the park, because even if you want to say that the park has no surveillance in it, which is very strange, but even if you want to say that, we have video footage of her entering the park. How did he get there? Did he tunnel? Do we have any footage of him in the surrounding area, anywhere in the proximity? As of right now, we've seen none of that. And I'm sure that none of it exists, because believe me, if it did, they would not have hesitated to put it on the nightly news.
Good evening. I'm Maurice Dubois.
And I'm Christine Johnson. Jurors were unable to reach a verdict after 2 weeks of gruesome evidence and graphic testimony.
They had heard from the victim's father, who relived the moment he found his daughter dead.
Isn't that interesting? There was a massive search for his daughter, and he's the one who found her. Isn't that strange? That's a little bit more than a coincidence to me. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Let me say this very quickly. Once again, the father is the person who normally accompanies his daughter on her jogs. And I say this all the time, particularly to females who like to jog. Women really should not be jogging by themselves, but As we all know, most women are hard-headed. They like to do things their way. They don't like to hear they don't like to hear things from men. Unfortunately, there are many women who actually get raped and killed on their jogs in the morning or in the evening. A woman should always be accompanied by a man when she's jogging in a park. I mean, it makes no sense for a female to be jogging by herself. And of course, Mr. Vetrano's daughter, she was one of these Instagram females. She was attractive. And she really had no business out there jogging by herself. But once again, do I believe that Chanel Lewis was the person who committed the crime? No, I do not. I believe my own personal view of it, just looking at the little factoids that have been revealed and what I understand by what I'm looking at, I believe that Mr. Vetrano was involved in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to call it necessarily a quote-unquote sacrifice of his daughter. It is highly possible that something may have transpired where he may have owed somebody some money and they wanted to send him a message. Who knows? Anybody who knows anything about Howard Beach, even though the community may have changed a little bit over the years, that is mafia territory.
CBS 2's Jessica Layton live now outside the courthouse in Kew Gardens, Queens tonight. Jessica.
And once again, everything I'm saying is alleged. I'm just giving you my perspective.
Maurice and Christine, this ruling just about an hour and a half ago seemed to catch everybody off guard. When the judge said the words hung jury and mistrial, the entire courtroom fell silent.
Brothers, understand something. This case was declared a quote-unquote mistrial due to a hung jury. And allegedly, they have a videotaped confession of Mr. Chanel Lewis, more than one. So for him to have allegedly confessed to the crime on tape multiple times, and the jury still be deadlocked, that should tell you what? The jury believes that his confession, quote-unquote confession, was coerced by the police. And according to his defense attorney, Chanel Lewis initially denied that he was involved in the crime at all. And then after being locked away and not being allowed to call his parents, because once again, the brother does suffer from learning disabilities and he's rather mentally inept, what we would have called back in the day, quote unquote, borderline retarded, quote unquote. And it's very obvious. I mean, no disrespect. Chanel Lewis is not capable of plotting anything like this with any type of foresight. And had he done something like this, he would have left so many clues that it would have been very easy to catch him. Supposedly they found his DNA under her fingernails, but according to his defense attorneys, that could have been engineered, and that could have happened in a myriad of ways. Now, when Chanel Lewis allegedly confessed to the crime, the particulars that he gave were not consistent with what they found. According to him, according to the quote-unquote confession or the coercion, he states that he was upset due to a neighbor playing loud music, so he went to the park, and as she ran by, he attacked her and then killed her, but he denies having been involved in the quote-unquote rape. Now, according to their investigation, the forensic investigation of her body, she was raped both vaginally and anally. Now, he had some type of damage or a scar or a cut or wound on his hand that they allege was from punching her in the mouth. Now, one of the investigative officers, an officer by the name of Joshua Rivera, he alleges that they took Chanel Lewis's phone and they found 137 search items, most of them related to the case, including supposedly him doing a search for a sacrament on penance. Now, brothers, I'm not sure if he's a Catholic or not, but most so-called black men, the last thing that they're worried about is trying to research a sacrament on penance. Most so-called black men are not even Catholics. I doubt if he or his family are Catholics. And even if he was, I doubt that he would feel compelled to look up something like that with the mental condition that he has to deal with. So I just don't see him having that level of foresight. They claim that he was looking up things like the Miranda rights. Like, come on. I mean, who truly believes that when you look at how this brother projects himself? Now, look, who knows? He might be a mastermind like Ed Norton in Primal Fear. Who the hell knows? He might suffer from dissociative identity disorder. He might have multiple personalities. Who knows? I doubt it, though. I doubt it. And I believe the jury doubts it as well.
not only silent, but everybody just seemed to kind of freeze in place in disbelief. After the words started to sink in after a couple of seconds, then came the whispers, things like, "I can't believe this. Is he serious? Oh my gosh." But the jury only deliberated for a day and a half. The stunned parents of Karina Vetrano walked out of the courtroom, followed by relatives, some of them crying, after hearing the judge declare a mistrial by reason of hung jury.
Once again, something is very rotten in Denmark when it comes to this father right here. Just my view of it. As we can see, and I would encourage you brothers to look this up. Look up the cornuto necklace or the cornicello necklace, which is known as the devil's horn necklace. The fact that he's dressed in all black, I mean, it's just too many coincidences. He's the one who happened to find his daughter's body when the police were also searching for it along that same path. And he happened to be the one who was able to locate his daughter's body. Very, very strange to me. And once again, where's the footage of Mr. Chanel Lewis entering the park and leaving the park? I need to see that.
In a case that made headlines across the country, the jury deciding the fate of Chanel Lewis on the...
I mean, look at this dude. I wouldn't trust this guy to go to the store and bring me back a pack of Now and Laters, much less him being able to hatch a plot where he waited undercover for this woman to run by, and he was able to rape her vaginally and anally, escape the park, and supposedly the only reason why he got caught, allegedly, this is how he got caught. There was a police lieutenant by the name, I believe his name is Joey Russo. This guy claims that he saw Chanel Lewis walking around the neighborhood overly dressed for a hot summer day, and according to Joey Russo, he was trying to avoid the police. And that's how they collared this guy. No type of real police work at all. Basically, he was a very funny looking black guy who stood out, and we're going to try to pin the case on him because we feel like he comes from a poor background. He's not that swift, and we'll be able to pin the charge on him. Who the hell knows who really did this? I'm not going to say that the police were involved, but any one of us who have ever been involved with or who have had family who were involved with the legal system know that police will not hesitate to frame up anybody. And let me say this very quickly, because people might say, what about DNA evidence? DNA evidence allows two things to happen at a far higher level of proficiency than 30 years ago. Number one, DNA evidence allows you to catch criminals that they would not have been able to catch 30 years ago. And number two, it allows them to be able to frame people who they would never have been able to frame with this level of proficiency 30 years ago. It's very easy to frame up somebody if you really want to. All you need is a DNA sample from them, which he gave when they first started to investigate him. He gave them his DNA sample. So who knows what they did with it.
On the murder charge, deliberated a day and a half before saying they were hopelessly deadlocked. The 22-year-old was accused of strangling and beating the young woman while she was out for a run near her home in Howard Beach, Queens.
You see this footage right here, brothers? If you live in New York and you've been following this case, they show this footage of this young woman running into the park ad infinitum over and over and over again. But they have yet to show Mr. Chanel Lewis entering or leaving the park. And even though they may be able to use the excuse that there were no surveillance cameras in the park, which I doubt, but you know what, let's go with that. You're going to tell me that there was no surveillance footage of him either entering or leaving the park? Nah, not in New York City. Not believing that.
Queens in August 2016. Her father, Phil Vetrano, found her body. During the trial, the state presented evidence linking Lewis to DNA found on the victim's cell phone, fingernails, and neck. In fact, it was...
Yeah, I wonder how I got there.
It was that testimony from the DNA expert that the jury asked to listen to again today.
Yeah, the DNA expert. That's certainly somebody who needs to be vetted. And just getting back to Mr. Joshua Rivera, the person who did the search on his phone, there allegedly was a photo on his phone of the crime scene. Somebody had to tell me why he would take a photo of the crime scene. When I say he, I'm talking about Chanel Lewis. Beyond that, I would also need to know about the photo that they alleged they found on the phone of a hand with a scar on it, a fresh scar on it, bleeding. And when Joshua Rivera, one of the investigating officers, was asked, can you say without any reasonable doubt that the hand in the photo on that phone belongs to Mr. Chanel Lewis? He says, no, we cannot ascertain that. So then how the hell did that photograph get on his phone? I smell a big, big frame up.
Prosecutors also presented a confession from the East New York man. Then, just after 9 o'clock tonight, the jury sent the judge a note saying it was unable to make progress and had exhausted all thoughts and opinions. Vetrano's family and prosecutors did not speak after the ruling, but I caught up with Lewis's defense attorneys who had this to say.
The jury is understanding that DNA is not all it, the confession is not all it, and there are issues in the case that, as you all see, it's much more complex.
She's saying that there are other dynamics that make it much more complex. In other words, I believe that she's suspecting that the police are involved in trying to perform a frame-up on her client.
Win for you?
Well, it's not a conviction, so I guess that's a good thing, but closure would be a good thing too.
All right, so now a new court date of January 22nd has been set. At that time, we're told...
Let me say this also. Just the fact that they got a hung jury means what? That means that in their jury selection process, they did a good job. I'm sure that there were quite a few so-called black people on that jury, at least 3 of them, for it to be a hung jury in that way, where people would not give in. And that's what you're supposed to do in cases like this. The people that you choose for the jury are supposed to appropriately represent the overall community, the borough, the city, or what have you, so that we can make sure that things are handled properly and that there are not any agendas. Once again, there's just something very, very fishy about this whole thing. If it were me, I would focus on the father and his allegiances. Who is he aligned with? Because for this to occur and they're trying to blame this dude, he just looks completely incompetent. He looked a little bit more competent in court because it appears that he's put on about 25 or 30 pounds. And they probably have him sedated as well, or on some type of prescription medication. But there was a scene when they walked him out of the precinct almost 2 years ago, and that dude looked like a gerbil. He was looking around, just mesmerized, bugged out of his damn mind. There's no way in the world that you're going to tell me that that person hatched a plot to vaginally and anally rape a woman and escape surveillance, and the only way that you caught him was because he looked fishy in the community. Hell no. Bullshit.
Both sides will come back together and try to figure out how to proceed in this case. It may mean setting a new trial date. It might not. I don't think at this hour anybody knows what's going to happen. But in the meantime, Lewis remains in jail. We're live outside Queens Criminal Court tonight. Jessica Layton, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Jessica.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. Once again, for you cats in the New York City area, stay on top of this case, man. So peace.